Hi, and welcome to episode 3 of Painted Bread Quarterly Slush Pile. One of the reasons why we're doing this is we take more time than other editorial boards, but we stand behind our methodology, so much so that we're going to share our process with you through this podcast. One of those things is having a whole bunch of people talk. So we've got a lot of people with us today. I am Kathleen Volk-Miller. I'm co-editor of the Painted Bride Quarterly. I am director of the graduate program in publishing at Drexel and the Drexel Publishing Group. And I publish creative nonfiction and personal essays in Salon, Family Circle, Brainchild, upcoming in Oprah, and all kinds of places. With us today in the audio studio in Philadelphia is Tim Fitz. Tell us about yourself, Tim.
Hi, I'm a short story writer and a novelist. I teach here at Drexel University, and I've been reading with the Painted Bride Quarterly for about 2.5 years. Some of my short stories appear in magazines such as Shenandoah, the Gettysburg Review. I've got a new piece in the Madison Review. And
Nice.
I have a novel coming out this spring with Moonhak Dongne, a publisher in Seoul, as a Korean translation.
So cool. And Lauren is also in the studio with us. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a senior English major here at Drexel, and I've worked with PBQ and Drexel Publishing Group for about 2 years now.
Okay. Marion?
Hello from Abu Dhabi. Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Marion Wren. I'm sitting here in the relative dark. It's 9 o'clock in the evening in Abu Dhabi. I direct the writing program here at NYU, and I write creative nonfiction essays, and I do some scholarly articles and research about writing programs. And I'm just freshly back from India, where I was in New Delhi at Shiv Madhur University, talking about Major Jackson's poems and how undergraduate writers might learn a thing or two about acknowledging their inspirations. Glad to be here.
Very nice. Major Jackson's name is going to come up twice because I was going to announce toward the end that he's going to be one of our alumni guests on an upcoming
Yay.
episode. So stay tuned. All right. Thank you, Marion. Marion is henceforth today going to be called Wren or Dr. Wren because another one of our editors with us today is Miriam. And so we don't have to do that with the N's and the M's. Marion will be the Renster. And now, so Miriam, why don't you tell us who you are and where you are?
I'm Miriam Heyer. I'm a senior editor with Painted Bride Quarterly, but I started as an intern. I write fiction, though I don't publish very much of it. And right now I am sitting on a red folding chair that I'm going to try not to fall out of.
Okay, and now we have Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Schneiderman. I'm the head of the New York staff. I think I joined PBQ about a decade ago, although it always seems fuzzy, the actual origins. I'm a poet. I have written 2 books of poems, and then I have a 3rd book of poems coming out from Red Hen in April.
Wonderful.
Did I say I was the head of the New York staff? I'm the head of when Dr. Wren went to Abu Dhabi.
Yes, and you've done a smashing job. We're
Yes,
very
indeed.
happy to have all these cities involved. So the poems that we're going to discuss today can be found on our show notes on our website, pbq.drexel.edu. And we're going to start with the work. But everything has a story behind it. So I would like to tell a little story about the pieces that we're about to look at. Tim Fitz, one of the editors with us, saw this group of poems and said, you know what, they're going to get snagged up. I have to pull her to the top of the slush pile. And he did. And we looked at the work, and when we contacted the poet about this first poem that we're going to read. It's called Lost Colony. It's in several sections. And we told her we only wanted one of those sections. And she said, well, guess what? I've done a lot of revision and I've got a whole new poem for you. So she sent us that and a couple others. And Tim was right. A couple of the others in her initial submission to us had been already scooped up by other presses. So today we have 3 poems from her that we're going to look at. So Tim, why don't you start us off?
Okay, great. Yeah. The first, when I first read these, I was about 3 lines in when I knew I was in love with the poems. There was something about the images and the voice in the poems that just hit that nerve. So the first one, the first stanza is Lost Colony. Settled in the spring of 1584, Roanoke was the first English colony in North America. We built 2-story houses with stone walls on dry mud, the island a crumbling sandbar pummeled by wind and waves. We erected fences and fence posts, laid claim to a patch of wilderness like Ptolemy mapping the heavens, giving titles to congregations of stars. We found a bay with oysters more numerous than pebbles and a seashore bright with starfish and sand dollars. What we didn't find was gold to fill our ships or rain to coax our harvest. For 3 years, no sails appeared on the horizon. The way I waited for you, love absent on the horizon. Only the blinding clarity of a cloudless sky ushering us towards winter. Disaster is the absence of events. The sun wheeled the heavens like a flour mill, everlasting waves lashed at the shore. No boats in sight, the sea rolled back our memories of home. The reek of urine in the streets of London, the towers of Parliament spearing the sky like a row of bayonets above a river of blood. The hulls of abandoned vessels lurking beyond sight.
Part 2. CRO. Letters carved into a tree stump at Roanoke before the colony's disappearance in 1590. Nothing remained of what we owned. No pottery, no tools, not even our own bones. What we brought with us was filched by the fingers of the ocean and the shadow of the moon. Not even a dream in which you appear, a shadow behind a wall of water. Beloved, did I imagine us walking hand in hand in the city of cathedrals, your hands smelling like baked bread, the afternoon sun glazing rooftops and sidewalks with gold? I hold on to evidence, a pebble plucked from the Rue Monge, a sprig of lavender from the apothecary, the dress I wore the last night. On the island, the letters CRO, a bird with a golden beak and black wings, all that's left to tell of our departure. No violence had been done. We simply gave up, waiting for salvation to appear. Like a chalice falling out of the heavens or the waters parting to reveal a road, I gave birth to a child. Even without news of you, we are happy. How bright the moon shines without city lights. I remain ever your loving Eleanor.
3. 500, the number of mountains destroyed by mountaintop removal coal mining in Appalachia, including Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. We named her Virginia, land of Blue Ridge Mountains, fish-chalked rivers, and timber stands vast enough to build all the battleships of Europe. After centuries, we are still after what brought us here. Timber, fur, coal, the exhumed remains of ancient forests we burned to light our homes. Today, asphalt cuts through this valley like a ribbon of steel, and explosions shave the scalp off of tree-covered mountains. Rocks shatter like fragments of a skull. Men excavate hillsides, blast through rock, bringing down avalanches of boulders, mud, and branches. Bodies tumble down like logs. The women buried themselves in their coal-stained clothes with the children they miscarried. Some abandoned this place, let mud and rain pull their houses back into the earth. Most stayed, subsisting from the mountains they helped to destroy. This gutted Appalachia is a war zone, but one we still call home.
4. Arlington, Virginia, June 1992. Dear Chen Ying, Virginia is beautiful. I walk to the Potomac River with Mother every evening, and we watch the sun go down over the mountains, orange slices on the water, geese gliding over the surface like the airplanes landing at Reagan Airport. Everything here is bigger and faster. We ride in dragons shaped like cars. Here we play with Barbie dolls instead of silkworms. And in the autumn, the leaves turn red like the lanterns during the spring festival. And we light candles inside pumpkins carved with hideous faces. Unlike our friendly family ghosts, they have no names and confer no blessings. I am learning new words: crow, cloud, kite. You must speak here in order to survive. In social studies, we learned about a group of English people who sailed here in a tiny ship, built a settlement on an island, and disappeared a few years later. Eleanor's father came back to look for them, but he never found his daughter or his grandchild. I am thinking of her today, the family she abandoned, or who abandoned her, the beach extinguished of stars, the country's interior so vast and full of terrors, the night rustling with strange sounds. Sometimes you don't know enough to be afraid. You only know. The air is clean here. It smells like daffodils. The children have yellow hair like the tassels of corn and like scarecrows. It's hard to tell if they're real, but when they fall, they cry like we do. While I still remember how to form these characters, tell your mother thank you for taking care of me before I came. Maybe I'll send you the flowers I'm growing, heliotrope and nasturtiums, pressed into dictionaries we should study but use as weights. Until then, I subsist on the memory of your smiles, the sticky buns we ate together on festival days. I miss you, Changxin.
Ooh. Thanks, everybody. That was a great read.
Yeah.
Well, this is, it's unfair to talk about what the poem used to look like, but this is a big overhaul from the first time we saw it. It's a lot to take in. But there's so much.
Well, I think I'm going to jump in if you don't mind. I have to tell you, like listening to this piece and then being able to read a piece of it functioned like almost like a whirlpool or a tornado. Like it's sort of it was a wide funnel at the top and then narrowed down into the sort of specificity of the recent pass of this letter from 1992. And it's really elegantly done the way it moves. It's like scale and its scope into this epistle at the end, in the voice of this younger person who's been dislocated, right? So that's for what it's worth. I thought I would start us there.
That's
really
a lovely
amazed by
description.
the way the pieces of history resonated against each other. That the letter from the second section in the voice of Eleanor then gets picked up in the fourth as kind of the history, as the new history that this person is bringing herself into. I thought that was really amazing.
I love the line in the last letter, you don't know enough to be afraid. Sometimes you don't know enough to be afraid. And I think that there's something really connecting about foreign people coming to this place and forming memories of it and knowing that they don't know enough to really know the potential damage that could be done. And I think that the fact that we travel through time in this space is something that's really compelling.
I would love to hear Tim's opinion about all of this, having seen it like in the slush pile, identified this multi-part poem is definitely worth our consideration. When you hear it now, when you see it on the page, what's your reaction?
Well, sort of similar to what I felt when I first started reading it, because I was on kind of a reading drought at the time. I'd gone for about a month without reading something that didn't resonate with me personally. I know some people like certain things and some people dislike, and we talk about it at the meetings. But the things that hit a note with me wasn't happening, and I was starting to worry if it was me or if it was the work or what the deal was. And when I started reading this, the images jumped out at me, the language jumped out, and I really liked how it wasn't overly sentimental, and it so easily could have been overly sentimental, and how Clara negotiated that in her work, which I really appreciated that, because I hate it when that type of sentimentality spoils it for a potentially good piece of work. So when I see this now, I I see how consistently she navigates that territory through the drafts. And and it didn't, like I said before, it only took a couple of lines before I knew the rest of what I was going to read was going to be good. And I was hoping it wouldn't disappoint me, and it didn't. And then I looked at the date, and I saw that it had been in the slush pile for about 5 or 6 months, and I thought, there's no way that this hasn't been, this isn't getting snapped up somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I felt like we had to move a little faster. So I was happy that Kathleen felt the same way with the work. But so I'm really happy that it's getting the attention that it is. I feel it makes me feel really good as a reader, and as a writer too. I feel like it's nice when people's work gets the type of attention that it deserves. So I'm really happy with these pieces.
Yeah. And it's
I
interesting.
think that is something that people often misconceive about editors. Like, I think that when people think about us as gatekeepers instead of curators, they think of us as like these nasty people who go through like happily checking, discarding things and rejecting. And the truth is, like, if we reject too much, we're like, are we bad people?
Right.
Like, maybe I'm not liking all of this work.
Well, right. I mean, I think we're reading the exact opposite. We're reading wanting to like it, right? We're reading with an open heart and saying, please stop me. Right.
Yeah.
and that's a way that I talk about it a lot too, is like, you've got to stop the editors from moving on. Right. And this piece certainly did. So,
and also, what we do for our readership is what Tim did for us, right? That like the whole journal is saying, hey, reader, you have to take a look at this, right? That we have to love it enough to actually kind of like make sure that someone else sees it.
Right. Right.
So, and I want to just like also just reassert like the wonderful creepiness of the way the poem works. And I use the word creepy because like that Roanoke colony story it's a ghost story, right? Like the colony it's a mystery what happened to those people in the 1500s, right? Like it just disappeared. And the specificity of the poem is there was a historical figure like an Eleanor who figured in that history. And so like I think what's wonderful about the way the piece unfolds is this like uncanny presentation of facts around history, facts around Virginia, and then this formulation in the voice of the final letter writer who's making sense of this like alien story and putting those pieces together. And then it gives you a sense of her own new place, her new stance, her new citizenship, or however you might figure that. So I'm a fan of Clara Fang.
Yeah.
I was also really impressed that the Roanoke story was treated as part of a continuum, right? Because usually the Roanoke story is this sort of orphaned colony that has nothing to do with anything else. And like, it's like an American Horror Story season 1 where they're, work. And I was
zombie apocalypse.
Right. But I was so amazed that Clara is able to weave it into a history that continues up through a recent immigrant's life, that it's part of a continuum of people coming to a new place and in many ways destroying it while loving it. That making a home is not necessarily separate from destroying a place. And, that search for peace and that search for comfort and that search for cleanliness and family and structure is so powerfully driving everyone across the poem. And I thought that was really beautifully done.
Absolutely.
I think that the other part of that continuum or continuity is that there's some kind of romance or longing in, the person who's watching the horizon without boats. That's one speaker. And then in the final, the fourth section, you have someone who comes right out and says, I miss you. And it's this idea that there's some fundamental thing that happens in this landscape when you're missing someone else.
Yeah.
Actually, Ren, going back to what you said about, the creepiness earlier, I really liked in the second part 2, the shift of the verb tense here. So it's, the colony has failed by this point. Nothing remained of what we owned. And then later, no violence had been done. So this is all her after the fact, but, and Eleanor is speaking here. But we don't know what happens to her. And I think that adds to that whole, what you're talking about, the creepiness, but it's not outright. It's very latent.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, I'm like holding myself back from quoting line after line that is just so beautiful. And she just does such a fabulous job of ending each section. The end of 3, this gutted Appalachia is a war zone, but one we still call home. Mm-hmm. That's gorgeous. And like Miriam said, the very last lines are, until then I subsist on the memory of your smiles. I miss you.
Mm-hmm.
And as Ren started the whole thing, like we start in this vortex and funnel down to something that's specific and gut-wrenching and emotional and individual, to a specific person. It's just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. And then Kathleen, I love it's that word subsist too, that points back to Appalachia. Like it's this like stitch back into the fragments of the poem, right? The whole thing is so carefully orchestrated. It's easy to trust the craft of it. And that's delightful.
Yeah.
That's delightful.
I think we could talk about this for our whole time, but I think we might be ready. I think we might be ready to vote, and our listeners can see this poem in the show notes. And I think I will move that we vote. Do we vote to vote? Vote to vote?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So in the studio, we're going to use PBQ's thumbs up rule, and the remote people are going to text in their vote to our wonderful producer and engineer, Joe. So 1, 2, 3, vote.
Okay.
Well, we're 3 in the studio, and remotely
2 yes, one no vote.
2 yes and 1 no.
1 no vote.
One no vote. 1 no vote.
No, it's a heart. I sent you an emoji.
Did not come through.
The emoji did not come through, but your sentiment did. So what this means is that Clara Fang's poem Lost Colony is in its entirety. We are thrilled, and that now means our listeners can both see it in the show notes and in Painted Bread Quarterly. Thank you very much, Clara. So
the bowling ones to the top.
Yeah. So this is how Slush rises, right? You stop us in our tracks and get risen right to the top. So we have a couple more from the same poet. We have the next one is called Don't Go Away. And I'll just jump right into that one. Don't go away. The night shakes its wings and the sky hasn't folded its whitewashed lawn chairs. Hyacinths in the garden gleam like pale fire. The forests are crammed with shadowy fish. I heard you say, I don't know when I'm coming back. Once I lost my car in a strange city while we circled the streets searching for a way home. All was dark except where we glimpsed ballroom dancers flickering like moths through a window. At dinner, we spoke to each other, 1 or 2 words only. Yet here we are, alone in your car while I cast my net for something to say. Stay. Take me with you. If you go, I will see your eyes looking back in every corner. I won't have to listen to hear you call my name. If you go, you must come back quickly, or else clouds will sweep the rooms with rain.
She has a great way of describing loss and sadness.
Yeah. Tim, on the last one, you were saying that you liked the lack of sentimentality, that the emotion was expressed without sentimentality.
Right.
This is more direct and naked in its sentimentality.
But it's not cheesy.
But but somehow that's what actually appeals to me is the directness of the appeal. Stay, right? Just stay. A sentence to itself. I'm kind of in love with that.
But the sentimentality matches the moment in the poem.
Yeah.
So she keeps that even.
Right.
I love the image. All was dark except where we glimpsed ballroom dancers flickering like moths through a window. That's great.
My own definition of sentimentality is unearned emotion, and I think this definitely earns the emotion.
Yeah.
But I do think the prosody and the craft really help. So like the moment that Lauren called attention to, and also look at this, at dinner, we spoke to each other, end of line, end of stanza, 1 or 2 words only. And that's so beautifully done, the way that turns back on itself and sort of changes the syntax and what it's meant.
Yeah.
And Jason, like just pushing down into the next stanza, right? So 1 or 2 words only, yet here we are, line break, alone in your car, while I cast my net, break, stanza break for something to say. And it's that double moment of like casting the net, trying to contain somebody, trying to latch on or capture, right? Keeping the person in place. But the net is really like she's struggling for something to say. So you get that double whammy of like, let me find the word that holds you. And she can't.
And
right?
I don't have this
other than stay.
Yeah. And I think that casting of the net for something to say, I don't think that's followed by what is actually said in the recalled situation. I think that's the essence of what the speaker wanted to say and wasn't able to. That to say would be inadequate in the situation to persuade the beloved, but is certainly adequate in the poem to break our hearts as readers.
Yeah.
I do love the feeling that we're in a private conversation, that there are 2 characters here that I start to get to know almost because of the strong feelings that one is having about the other.
And, it's funny. I remember when I read The Batch, I actually thought this was a piece of Lost Colony. And it goes to what Tim was saying. Like, she really works this terrain of like loss and grief, departure, abandonment, right? Like that seems to be the ground she's working. And so honest to goodness, I actually thought this was another section of Lost Colony.
I did too.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know, guys. Am I moving too fast if I say let's call a vote on this?
I don't think so, because I think that one of the ways that our editorial process works is that we talk until we seem to all be on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, vote. Okay. There's 3 thumbs up in the studio, and there's 3 yes votes so Clara is raking them in. I mean, really, you guys, I would just keep sighing. I would just keep going, like that's about what I have to say about this poem. So, all right. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So this, it's terrific to move through. And now we've had that first poem was 4 sections, each formatted a bit differently. The last section was an actual letter. The second poem that we just did was far more of a traditional poem, let's call it, with, maybe 3-line stanzas, everything kind of left justified, shorter lines. Now we have a poem by the same author, our last one from Clara Chang today, called The Other Side of Night. And it's a dense prose block. And I'm wondering who would like to take a crack at reading that? You want to?
I'll read it.
Tim's going to get that for us.
The Other Side of Night. The Buddhist monk instructs us to pay attention to our breathing, but all I can think of is the way you touched me before I left for Utah, like oil splattered on the wrist, like snow falling on bare shoulders. For the next 2 years, the great bowl of the Salt Lake Valley was cleft by a chasm I could not close. The mountains are taller than I imagined. The Great Plains is vast like the Pacific Ocean. The distance between one who loves and one who doesn't. Not able to turn back, the people who lost everything built a city praising God on the snow-white shores of that inland sea, and all who came to it admired its ship-like tabernacle, its broad avenues, its temples without windows. At the bottom of my suffering there is a door. The latch opened and I sank. I breathed in water and breathed out love. So much of it that it filled the oceans and the air, and the fish grew wings and the birds grew gills, and the eyes of the people were opened, and no one killed or hurt one another, because they saw the wound they carried in themselves in each other.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah, similar sort of vibe going on in this poem, where she saves it at the end. I think again, where she makes you feel sad about what's happening in the poem, but then she creates an image and puts it in the sort of light that I don't know really any other way to put it. She just sticks to landing. She finishes the poem without messing it up.
The figurative and the literal, and when it gets to there's this beautiful figurative description of Salt Lake City, and then all of a sudden this totally metaphorical, at the bottom of my suffering there is a door.
Oh, I love that line.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's so gorgeous, and you don't realize that you're being set up for that, and yet it's so perfect when it arrives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was exactly the line I would have quoted right out of there.
It's a hard line to pull off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, the one that comes next, the latch opened and I sank. And I get there and I'm like, oh man, she just like broke my heart and it's keeping me broken, right? Like she's going to keep me in this sadness. But then she resurrects it, right? Like I breathed in water and breathed out love. And then the project of the rest of the poem turns on this moment of it's a happiness project. Like this isn't nihilism. This isn't the end of things, right? It is a kind of like heart mending, which is such a surprise after the heartbreak of the stuff that's come before it, like Lost Colony, the poem that we just looked at. And then this is like, don't mistake me. My heart is full. Right. And that's lovely, like a really surprising, and ending.
The suffering is the beginning of kindness, right? But because they're wounded, if they can see the suffering, that's the beginning of the end to the suffering.
Yeah, I think that last line really brings in some like universality there, and is like we're dealing with this idea of like abandonment and distance and separation. And there at the end, you really get the feeling of, a coming together, a similarness, a likeness. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. I think we're referring to the other two poems, but they're each so gorgeous in their own way. Individually, if I read any one of these alone,
I would want to put them in separate issues so that they're not kind of resonating against each other. There's not the chance of the error that Marion was saying, where you kind of see it as part of Lost Colony. I'd want to see this actually in a different issue than Lost Colony.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess we have to vote first, though. It seems like we are already ready, listeners. Right. This is not how it usually happens. There's usually we can talk about a 6-line poem for 45 minutes,
like a Julia Child cooking show. You make the sausage.
That's so funny.
Okay, you guys ready? 1, 2, 3, vote. And yet again, there's 3 thumbs up in the studio, and there's 3 yes votes remote. So I don't know if we have ever gone unanimous. 3 for 3 and unanimous. This is extraordinary. Yeah. And guess what, you guys? It's episode 3.
Whoa,
now I'm a little scared.
That's some magic. That's some magic right there.
Shoot. What's the date? Oh, it's not March 3rd. Thank God.
Is it 23rd? It is the 23rd. No, it's the 24th.
24th. Well, you are in the future, Dr. Wren, but it's still the 24th.
Listen, from the future, I'm noticing a 3, right? And that is that Miriam and Marion sound alike, so that's us too. But Lauren called me Wren, which made me think that Lauren sounds like L''Ren, like Ren and
Lauren.
So we are.
We've got all
three.
kinds of crazy synergy. Yeah, well, it's the magic third episode.
Mhm.
So
Indeed.
right. Well, all right. Well, congratulations to Clara. We'll send her a contract right away. Make sure that nobody else scoops up any of that work. And you know, really, if this was a real meeting, we would probably sit back and sigh for a minute or two. But I think because it's a podcast, we should roll on and look at the next one we have up here, which is Roger Camp's Writing Your Aura. Who wants to read that? Jason?
Sure. I can
Thank
do that.
you.
Writing Your Aura. In front of the Bank of America, a bank protection officer lays hands on the newspaper stand like a man who knows his way around an altar. There's no mistaking him for the bank guard of my youth. The graying, pot-bellied retired cop, well laundered in blue, dozing inside the doorway. A new age version, this man is outside, swabbed in black like SWAT, protective vest and automatic in hand. Shooting your way out of a bank is one thing, but shooting your way in? Seeing Isaac, patriarch of the sidewalk, would turn my tail if I were a robber of banks. Friendly, he has earned Main Street's affection, every pedestrian watching his back. When I wear a lid he likes, I get a fist bump. Hidden in his casual demeanor is no slouch. Behind those shades, a warrior, Iraq, or maybe Afghanistan. At peace with himself, he is adept at reading others. Greeting him after returning from 6 sunny days in Alaska, he said to me, "That was you, writing your aura."
Very nice. Thank you.
It feels nice to say. It definitely works in the mouth.
Mhm.
The use of line breaks to kind of guide the syntax, I think, is really well done.
I like that it's a character study in a way. You know, the whole thing is this is Isaac, patriarch of the sidewalk,
Mhm.
right?
I think at first I was kind of like thrown off a bit by the scene. It doesn't seem to fit, you know, and the character, him being kind of like, my first thought was like hippy dippy, like writing your aura. What kind of cop says that? But you know, we go back up in the new age, the capital new age version. You know, so I think that kind of ties together.
Tim, does it resonate for you?
The thing that resonates with me is it scares me a little bit where we used to have this nice cop with a pot belly, and now we have this this guy who came from a war zone, and he's treating us like we're in a war zone. And if I was reading this, if I was from another country, I would wonder if there's some sort of martial law going on here. To me, it's a little disturbing that everything is getting so amped up that we have I mean, when a bank's robbed, they don't really do anything. They just hit the button and they let them get away, and then the bag explodes and they chase them. You don't really need somebody who looks scary because you want people coming to the banks. You want people to think that nothing ever happens, but banks get robbed pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And it just seems like there's more cops, more SWAT teams, more body armor, more tanks, all that stuff.
true.
To me, it's disturbing. And so that's what I like about the poem, is that it speaks to what's happening. And it speaks to a disturbing trend. So that's how it resonates with me as far as the themes of it.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Wren, are you still here? Jason, are you still here?
I am still here.
What are you thinking about?
I don't know. There are some lines which I'm not in love with. Like the shooting your way out of a bank is one thing, but shooting your way in, I'm not loving that question.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know, some of the sort of, because, right, I mean, part of what's working in the poem is that there is this tension or juxtaposition between the scariness of the martial law and the kind of violence that's inherent in his role. And ideally, you know, this is kind of like, right, the nation state reserves violence for itself and is the only one which uses it and uses it in the enforcement of law. But then there are sort of all of these places that are sort of cute. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that tension is really working for me 100%. I mean, I kind of want to hear what other people think about it. Because, like, it's you know, hidden in his casual demeanor is no slouch, right? I mean, sort of the understatement in that is... But then there isn't knowledge of him, right? I mean, like, that's the weird thing. It's like, on one hand, Isaac, Patriarch of the Sidewalk, it's this character sketch of someone he knows, and yet there's all this guessing, right? A warrior, Iraq, maybe Afghanistan, right? Like, he doesn't know.
And, you know, he's Main Street's affection. He has earned Main Street's affection. So it's in a small enough place that people know him. Everyone has his back. He gives our speaker a fist bump when he wears hats he likes, right? But then he is, like Tim was saying, he's like the sign of a new, more fortified stage of bank security. And the fact, you know, he's outside the bank building, that's all kind of disconcerting.
Well, I was thinking also about what it means to protect the banks and how, as a country, we have been protecting the banks in ways that are not good for the kind of individual. I'm thinking of, like, on a corporate crime level. Mm-hmm. And the idea that you have this guy stationed outside as though someone might want to assault the institution of the bank, right. But he just becomes really part of the scenery for the people who are around him in a way that we don't necessarily focus on, and therefore we're not really understanding why he might actually be there. I actually really liked that tension, and I liked the cute moments that brought it out.
I love that, but for me, the cute language distracts me from that. But I love that interpretation too. Just he's out there, just a reminder that that how they're protected as a dominant part of our culture. But yeah, the cute stuff sort of distracts me from it.
I think the cute stuff, to me, I interpret it almost as a warning about what you get comfortable with or what you notice, but simultaneously ignore because someone complimented your cool hat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At peace with himself, he is adept at reading others. Yeah.
What does it mean to ride your aura? Is that like slang that I don't know?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Your aura.
So I don't know what riding your aura means either. And I want to say that that's embarrassing because my sister's a professional psychic and she makes her living reading people's auras.
Right.
So I feel like I want to email her or
she should have tipped you off.
Get a definition.
She should have tipped you off before the meeting.
Right? Exactly. So that's my confusion. I don't actually understand what riding your aura means. So that it's the title and the last line. I just feel a little baffled.
Yeah.
So that, I guess that was, and then the second thing that leaves me a little bit baffled, I love the way Jason read the poem. Like the way it sits on the page, just, it wants to be read and it wants to be sort of in the mouth, as Jason said, right? And in that very first, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5 lines, it strikes me so much like a Billy Collins poem. There's like some sort of like quality of like benign and yet vicious description, right? I can almost see like this cartoon version of the thing, like, that he knows how to lay his hands on an altar, but I actually don't understand it. Like I can't quite envision what's happening. And that to me is a little like disconcerting, and not in a way that makes me feel, oh, this is uncanny. He's giving me something really familiar, but in a strange way. It just makes me feel like a doofus. Like I just can't see it,
My thoughts on the like a man who knows his way around the altar. I just took that as, another, like the institution of the bank, the institution of religion. And later on we have the patriarch, seeing Isaac, the patriarch of the sidewalk. So that's kind of how I took that.
Yeah.
And then honestly, my read of writing your aura, I thought 6 sunny days in Alaska, maybe he went snowboarding and he had a good time snowboarding and he was writing his aura, so I don't know.
I actually,
that might be it.
I like,
Comment. Yeah.
go ahead. Jason, are you going to talk? Okay.
Oh, I thought that the thing about the writing the aura was that he sees him physically change. He's gotten darker.
I just wanted to go back to Isaac for a second, because I think that there's something about the sacrificial son, like the guy who was sent to war and survived. We don't really know how. This is all speculation about this man's background. But the idea that person who knows his way around an altar because he himself was going to be sacrificed is now the person that we're trusting on Main Street. I think that there's something there also that makes us sympathize with the bank protection officer as much as it makes us nervous.
Yeah. So on that note, greeting him after returning from 6 sunny days in Alaska kind of takes my mind off of all that stuff, because I don't really know what the Alaska thing is about, and then I get confused by writing your aura. So in my fantasy world, if I cut the last few lines off the poem and ended it, he is adept at reading others, I don't know if that finishes the poem, though.
Right.
I'm not sure if there's a finishing moment before that, because I like all these things that we're talking about, even though I don't like the SWAT guy and his armor and all that stuff. All this stuff bothers me, but I like that we're talking about it in the poem. And then we get to the 6 sunny days in Alaska, and I wonder if we're now thinking about the poet instead of the poem.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Suddenly
that,
it's about the poet, and
Yeah.
it hasn't been the whole time.
And that part bothers me a little bit.
Yeah.
I also think it's a reversal of expectations, though, like kind of what Lauren said earlier about how you wouldn't expect this SWAT-looking guy to say something that sounds more perhaps hippie-ish. And I think that reversal is not necessarily supposed to be funny, but actually does wind up being funny.
Well, here's a non sequitur for you. I just Googled writing your aura, and the first thing that comes up is aura, which are pants made by Wrangler, and they're proportioned for slim fit. So that's all I get when I Google writing your aura. Slim fit jeans, which is totally nonsensical. I thought for sure the internet would teach me something Zen and I don't know, new agey about it, but it's a bust.
So what in where are people in terms, like what would we need to talk about to help people make a decision? Like what do people want to kind of like contemplate, or should we see where we are?
I think we can vote, or we can maybe.
Is this something we could request edits?
Oh, the Abu Dhabi clock is telling us that it's 10 p.m. there, but but I think that's a good signal. We'll take the clock as a clue that we should vote on this poem. So 1, 2, 3, vote. So in the room we have 2 no's and a yes. What do we have remotely?
1 yes, 1 no, 1 maybe.
Oh, who voted maybe? Come on.
No one has to confess.
Even without the maybe, we've got 4 no's, 2 yeses. Yeah, it's out. It's out. Now that we know it's out, I guess I could say that, like, I don't know what the takeaway is in the end. Like, we were making all of those interesting comments, but is that what you would think if you read it? Like, I don't know what our ultimate takeaway is. So
yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Like, there's something like so capable and lovely in the voice of the poem, but it didn't like ultimately deliver for my reading. So I don't know what.
It's definitely worth discussing. Right? There was something in there.
Yeah.
There was something in there, but it just wasn't close enough, I guess. So, okay, Roger Camp. Sorry about that one, but we have one more by Roger Camp. It's called Cape Cod. Anybody want to do the honors on that?
I'll do it.
Okay.
So Cape Cod. The cape itself is like a snake at its serpentine end. Beyond a place the charts call Long Point is an echo of the cape, a final coil within a coil. Walking in beech forest, I saw 2 snakes, their chocolate-colored bellies and trilateral yellow stripes entwined, age and youth combined. The older, larger one, sensing me, held still, while his younger, slimmer companion slid its body alongside, contour unfolding contour. In my effort to follow, I lost focus, lost the snakes, unable to define a coil within a coil, unable to tell beginning from end, lost my way as well, wending tail to tail.
I hate for the first comment to be a negative one, but I really don't like that last line. That's to not just be subjective and say don't like. I mean, suddenly we have rhyme internal and it's just no on the last line. So it's never good to make your last line be the thing that people the line we don't like, right? Now, the cape itself is like a snake.
I didn't like the first line. I'll be honest. I didn't like snake and serpentine. It seemed very redundant to me.
Oh.
Well, okay. So let me jump in, Lauren and Kathleen. Reading it was a pleasure. Like it really was. There was something like kind of delicious about the entwining of all of it, right? So that last line, lost my way as well, wending tail to tail. Like it's just this tangle of sounds that illustrates this snake ball that he's describing, right? So, so for what it's worth, there is a bit of pleasure in the reading of it. That's all.
I agree with Mary that if you follow the consonants across that first line, the cape itself is like a snake at its serpentine end. The way that S carries across the whole thing, and then the repeating P sounds. I really actually liked a lot of the repetitions, the contour, unfolding contour. I was okay with lost my way as well, wending tail to tail. I mean, to me, it was almost like Anglo-Saxon, right? I mean, you have those two strong those 2 really strong consonances on either side of the line with that really strong caesura in the middle. I was into it.
From its soundy, you like its sounds.
Yeah, lost my way as well, wending tail to tail.
And the line before it, unable to tell beginning from end, right? Like he's anticipating the L and the vowel sound of the E, right? Like it is artful, and it's I don't know, like reading it on the page, I didn't get it the first time, but speaking that out loud, it's performing in language the thing that it's describing, right? And it's interesting indeed.
I like the image in the middle of the poem. I mean, personally, if I could shave off the first line and the last 2 lines, I think I would like the poem altogether. I don't particularly dislike the first line. The last 2 lines for me kind of bother me. And the last line is a little sing-songy for me, but I like the image of the chocolate colored bellies and the trilateral yellow. I think that's a pretty beautiful
Probably my
sound.
favorite line, but then again, I like chocolate.
How do you tell an old snake from a young snake? That's the thing that baffles me. I mean, are there distinguishing features of old and young
You
snakes?
said it was bigger, right?
Yeah, well, maybe. I bet you
Okay,
old ones start
yeah.
looking dried up.
Yeah, it does. Like,
And I'll bet you the
older,
color
larger
changes too. The color gets duller, right?
ones. Yeah. I'm like, and when I think about, like, if I were walking down a path seeing a ball of entwined snakes, right? Like, good on you, Roger Camp, for like staying and looking, because I had a turntail
One running tail to do.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I want to vote.
Is it possible to
enough?
have one of the conversations about asking for an edit with the last line? But maybe not, since that's what Jason
Yeah.
likes so much.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
for the-
I'm sorry,
What's that?
Jace. Oh crap!
Oh, no.
Jason had something wise to say, and he's just
He's muted.
he got
Sorry,
muted.
sorry.
There you are.
I think it's built around a 5-stress line, isn't it?
Yeah.
The cape itself is like a snake at its serpentine end. Lost my way as well, wending tail to tail. Maybe it's a 6. I'm having a hard time counting, but I don't know. I thought the prosody was solid in this one.
All right.
Yeah.
I personally just feel conversationed out on it, but if other people still want to talk about it, that's great. Are we good?
I'm good.
I think that
All right. 1, 2, 3, vote. We have 3 thumbs down in the studio.
Wow. Oh, interesting.
3 what?
Because guess what just happened?
3 votes up.
Oh.
Son of a bitch. How can I arm wrestle you when you're in Abu Dhabi? Now what?
That's funny.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
well, because usually if we have a tie in one staff, we can send it to another staff.
Yeah, but we're mingling our staff. I don't know. Can we ask Joe the engineer to vote? What should we? Seriously. Well, I guess what we're going to have to do is Philadelphia is having an editorial meeting on Thursday, and I'll bring it to the Philadelphia table and see what happens there. The Philadelphia table, because we are housed here at Drexel, tends to have anywhere between 9 and 12 people voting at any given editorial meeting. So there'll be a lot of voices and a lot of fresh thoughts there. So this is interesting, but I guess episode 3 had all kinds of wild magic in it. And we have a
Wait
tie.
a second. Kathleen, I have to interrupt. Look at that. It was 3 yeses and 3 nos. Threes.
Yeah. So we'll take it to the Philadelphia meeting, and we'll be sure to let the listening audience know, because I'll bet they'll be hanging on every word. We've already gone an hour, so we had lots of other cool things to do, but I think that we should sign off of episode 3. But I would like to say to our listeners, look forward to other things we're going to do, as well as discuss poems. We're going to have some occasional segments like something random I saw in a literary magazine this week. That's going to happen every now and then. We're going to do things that piss editors off. We're going to do a convo about that.
This on a podcast?
On a podcast, yeah. Yeah, that'll be one of us. It'll be a special segment at some point. So whatever else we can dream of, we will have special segments, and would love to know what you think of what we're doing on our Facebook page, and we'll be posting threads for each episode. Thank you for your patience as we're learning what to do as we go. As you just saw, we just had a tie. At one point, I even thought I'm never going to have an even number, but look at what just happened. Sign up for our mailing list, which you can get to easily on the website. Go to pbq.drexel.edu, and you can sign up for a mailing list there. Anybody else have anything else to say and then there's sign off? Okay, well, keep reading. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, you guys don't really have to go. So don't you? That's probably a good solution for that poem, right?
Yeah.
That's what we'll do.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
just
You know,
discuss
it's
it in
funny.
Philly.
And I looked at my calendar too to see when we were meeting, but I think you guys are meeting before us, so that works.
Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow. So,
Great.
Jason, you don't like the idea of things that piss editors off?